focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without it saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
Do you think it's going to be just like a lot of like fear, like climate?
Yeah, fear sells. Fear sells. No one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious.
David, we heard from the governor of Washington this week talking about climate change as a permanent emergency. So my question is, how does the news media cover a permanent emergency?
Well, I think being honest that we're already living in a state that would have once seemed to us to be, a state of alarmism, and that our storytelling tools need to be commensurate with that fact. We can't shy away from scary projections about the future or the scary facts as we're living them today. I think we also need to start thinking a little harder and be a little clearer in our storytelling that learning to live in this new future, which will continue to get worse, probably considerably worse from here, is not just going to require decarbonizing, although that's very hard. It's also going to require us to be building out more resilience, more measures of adaptation, and hopefully doing that in a way that promotes some amount of social and climate justice. So it's not just about cutting carbon, it's also about defending ourselves against the impacts of nature, which we're already beginning to see growing more and more intense.
Defending ourselves against the impacts of nature. That's a stark way to put it.
I think there's just like a COVID fatigue. So like whenever a new story comes up, they're going to latch onto it. They've already announced in our office that once the public will be open to it, we're going to start focusing mainly on climate, like global warming, and like that's going to be our next like I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be our focus. Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without it saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
What I've noticed, Emily, 10 years ago versus today, there's a lot more climate change coverage on TV. There are a lot more reporters assigned to this beat. So there's been real progress, but is it enough in your view?
I think it's really great that we've had progress on this issue, but the fact is that we're just not treating it like the planetary emergency it is. I mean, we're not learning the lessons that the COVID-19 pandemic taught us, where we have a global crisis and the entire newsroom mobilizes to cover that crisis. We understand that it infiltrates every single area of our life. There's no excuse for being a reporter today who doesn't understand the basic science of COVID-19. Why is it not the same for climate change? Right now, everyone should be a climate reporter. And if you're not a climate reporter right now, you will be, whether you realize it or not.
I have a feeling it's just going to be like constantly showing videos of like decline in ice and weather warming up and like the effects it's having on the economy and really diving.
Let's go back to both of you on this. What does it mean, David, to be a climate reporter, that everyone has to be a climate reporter today?
Well, it means that climate is threaded through every aspect of our lives at the very highest level through the geopolitics and competition of nations, not just over energy resources, but over land and military relationships, trade relationships, all the way down to the individual, where many people's mental health is being eroded as we speak, not to mention their physical health today. Best estimates suggest that air pollution from the burning of fossil fuels kills about 10 million people every year, which is dying at the scale of the Holocaust, in fact, larger than the Holocaust every single year. And yet we don't see many public health stories, we don't see many moral crises stories addressed to that issue.
Pandemic-like story that will beat to death. But that one's got longevity, you know what I mean? It's not like there's a definitive ending to the pandemic or, it'll taper off to a point that it's, not a problem anymore. Problem, I think, is going to take years. So they'll probably be able to milk that for quite a bit,
So climate change overload.
Be prepared. It's coming.